It's not so easy to choose the right IDE for a certain job. Especially for beginners, there's a huge number of different IDEs and you have to figure out which one is the best for you. I tried out many different IDEs during my time as a software developer, and I want to show you which IDEs I'm currently using for mobile and web development. Of course, I would like to use only one IDE because then you only have to get into working with one tool, but unfortunately it's not so easy. Therefore, it's not only Visual Studio Code that I'm using, but also Android Studio and Xcode. I try to do all the coding in Visual Studio Code. Is it web development or app development, working with Flutter, coding in Python, doing the back end, the front end. 99% of my work I'm doing in Visual Studio Code. I run local servers there, I run the frameworks there, and I build and deploy for Android. I'm working on Windows most of the time. It's easy to deploy for Android. I don't have to use Android Studio for that. I can do this in Visual Studio Code as well. And of course I also deploy and build the web apps. Now, what do I need Android Studio for? I need it to set up emulators that I can use to test and debug the Android apps. And I need it to debug Rails specific tasks. You can do a lot of stuff in Visual Studio Code. There are a lot of add-ons, but sometimes it's just more convenient to use Android Studio. What do you need Xcode for? To set up iOS emulators, to debug iOS specific tasks. I usually build apps with Flutter and do all the coding in Visual Studio Code, but when I want to deploy it for iOS, I have to put it on my Mac, and I sometimes have to debug, and I always have to set up iOS specific settings, and therefore I need Xcode. You actually can't do it with other programs. Apple is restricting you there to use Xcode, and I also need Xcode to build and deploy my apps for the App Store. In a nutshell, I try to do most of the stuff with Visual Studio Code. There are a lot of add-ons, and I can do all my backend stuff, my web apps, and nearly all my Android stuff in Visual Studio Code. I need Android Studio for the emulators, and I need Xcode for iOS emulators, for iOS specific tasks, and of course for deploying it to the App Store. This is just a list of my currently preferred IDEs. I also worked with others, so if you want to know more about different IDEs and alternatives, just let me know.